Good morning and welcome to part 4 of building the DJH 2MT 260 kit. And today we are going to build, or I'm going to build, the chassis for the tender. But before I move on with that, I just need to clarify some things that arose from the last part and my error with drilling the holes for the Cosmetic rivets. I've been asked some questions via the YouTube comments section, and I just wanted, because it wasn't actually all that visible on when I was doing it, because I haven't got an overhead camera, but the rivets, when I redid them, I soldered them from the outside, not from the rear. They were soldered from the outside, and the holes that I had previously drilled were not, they were big enough for the heads to pass through, but they weren't so big that the heads passed through freely. So the heads are like 0.9 of a millimetre, and I drilled the holes 0.9, so there was a certain amount of interference. So you can see I took a photo using a macro lens on my camera, and you can see that the rivets are generally quite proud of the frame, so it was redeemable. It wasn't irredeemable. I didn't drill them out so big that when I fitted them they would have been swamped with solder. So they did work out okay in the end, but it's something that you really need to be aware of, that if you do follow my method, make sure that you do not drill the holes out too big so that the rivets fall through. Hey, but I'm only human. I make mistakes from time to time. I don't pretend to be perfect professional. I'm an average modeller, and I get what I think are a decent result at the end. So hopefully you can all relate to that. So anyway, so we're going to build the chassis today, and it's in amongst all of this. It's down here. So it's a little bit strange to what you are used to. I mean, most other kits that you get that have a tender, you will have the tender and various bits attached to the tender body, and then you'll just have like a 6-wheeled or an 8-wheeled chassis which goes in the middle. Now the DJH are different to this. I mean, I built another, I've built a 6MT kit which had a BR1 tender in, and that tender was very similar to this in construction. And what you have is the buffer beam. So the buffer beam is actually part of the chassis rather than the body. So it's something that you need to be aware of if you do this, that you really need to get this nice and square, otherwise there'll be quite a large gap between the tender body and the buffer beam, and indeed the drag beam. So this is the drag beam end, and this is the buffer beam end. And what you have is you have a Cosmetic buffer beam which has got some half etch detail on, and this will have 6 Cosmetic rivets on, and you have, this is the chassis frame. So to give the chassis a little bit of compensation, the middle bearings on the chassis, there you will see in the kit, when you get the bearings, you can see there's two bearings by themselves. Now the holes in those bearings are slightly larger, so they give the tender, the middle wheel, a bit of wobble, and the outside ones are more rigid. So they're just the standard bearings. I mean, I've got 4 out already. I've got the buffer beams, which are white metal, Slater's wheels, and the only other thing to mention is, before we start, is that you've got footsteps. Now the footsteps need bending down, and we'll do those, but on the rear of the support there is a letter etched in the bit, and that corresponds to the letter that is on the rear, etched on the rear of the step that fits that particular hole. So unlike other DJH kits, as I mentioned, this is one of the first O-gauge kits that they did. There are no numbers for the parts, so you have to sort of hunt around for the part that you need on the etches. But what they've done to make sure that you get the correct steps for these parts, there's a corresponding letter. So just make sure that you cut out the ones, this one for the drag beam, they're etched V. The ones for the buffer beam are etched W, and the footsteps for the loco have different letters. That some of them are A, which I noticed in passing. So what I've done, I've cut the various pieces out that I need, and I've cleaned them up using nail file again, just to sort of get the tarnish off, so there's a nice surface for soldering. I'll reposition the camera and we'll crack on with the build. Okay, so here we go. What I should have mentioned also, as well as having the wheels, in the instructions there are 4 pickups in the tender. Now it's entirely up to you whether you fit them. There are 6 on the locomotive for the 6 drivers and 4 on the tender. As I said, it's entirely up to you whether you fit them, but I am going to fit them. So I've got two packets of Slater's plunger pickups, because that's what it's designed for. So the first thing, what we're going to do first is we are going to fit, the 4 bearings, the 4 standard bearings. And as you see, they don't fit. So what we're going to do, we're going to use our tapered reamer, just gently remove the etching cusp from inside the holes and see if that. So again, the secret for this is not to take off. Do it very gently, because you don't want any slop in the axle bearings. You want the axle bearings to fit as neatly as possible. That way you will get a nice running chassis. So that's not quite right, so we do that a little bit more. You shouldn't need to apply any force. It's almost ready, and that was almost ready, so just a little bit more. Not quite. As a taper ream, do it from both sides, then you don't get a triangular shaped hole. Oh, almost. Little bit more. I know it's a bit tedious watching me do this, but right, there we go. That one fits nicely. That one needs a little bit more. Right, what you get with when you use tapered ream, it does raise up a little bit. Of course, on the inside it doesn't matter so much, but on the outside it does. You want the bearings to fit flat. So there's one. That sort of fits. We'll just run it through once more. There we go, that fits nicely. That one fits nicely, and we'll just do the other side quickly. That needs a tiny bit more off. So they're done, and we just need to... Don't have to worry about the middle axle holes yet, because what we're going to do, we're going to use some false axles to... we're going to use these. These are chassis alignment jigs. We're going to only need to use 2 of them. Just check that they fit. Yeah, they fit nicely through those bearings. So, okay, we'll get the hold and fold. And it's for tasks like this, where something like this does come into its own. Or, okay, with the other bit, they were a bit big. But it does simplify folding quite a bit. And you need to be careful doing this, because there are raised bits of this chassis which engage in holes on the more holes in the bottom. So don't deform those. So we'll do that. And if you haven't got a set square, you can use a ruler. So somewhere in my, this is what I call my immediate toolbox. So you can use that to check and just manipulate it if it's not. Okay, so that's one side done. We'll do the other side. That's bent, so that's that. And what we'll do is we'll fit the axle bearings first. So we'll do one side first. So I've got to avoid sitting on Boris's paws. His paws are right under my backside. Don't worry too much about getting solder everywhere, although the least amount of solder that you get, the less cleaning up you have to do. So there's two, and we'll do the other side. And what we'll do this time is we will use the alignment jigs just to check that they're okay. Because we want a nice running chassis. So there we go, that's okay. And that's good that it fell out actually. that's not. You need to make sure that these bearings sit flat on the chassis, so no space. Right, so that one's caught, and what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to use something a bit harder. And that's pretty good. Now, having done that, folded it up nicely and soldered 4 bearings in, we've got to now fold these parts up, which are the spacers and various other bits and pieces. And they're going to be an interference fit in this, so you're going to have to fold this out slightly to get these bits in. I know it's a bit counterintuitive, but I think this is the best way of actually getting a square chassis. So here we go. Just check that it's square. That's nice and square. Just go around, make sure that everything is square. That's all I can advise for doing this. Okay, so there's one spacer folded up, and we'll try fitting it. So if you notice, there's two that end and one this end, and this is for this end. That's good. That's good. So fitted quite well. We'll just check that that bearing is still fine. Yeah, it's not too bad. And we'll do the other one. If I didn't mention before, all the folds are on the inside. So as I said before, just go around when you're doing this and make sure that everything is square or looks square. You can manipulate this to a certain extent just by eye. And using your fingers. It is quite a chunky etching, and you're not going to damage it just using a little bit of manipulation. So this has got the 2 bits in, and obviously it goes in the end with the 2 bits, and just fit it like the other one. Oh, that's a bit of a tag on that. Let's just remove that. Yeah, make sure before you do this that you remove all the tags. There's one that I missed. So the end tags need a little bit of cleaning off them. The other end fitted perfectly. Oh yeah, they've got a little bit of an overhang from the etching process, so we'll just okay, so we'll just use these axles again. Okay, so there's the extended chassis, and what we'll do, I'll go and solder all around now. I'll leave these in because they will keep the bearings aligned to a certain extent. So I'll do this off camera because it's all I'm going to be doing is just soldering all along the seams. So when you come to do it, just make sure that you solder completely along all the seams. And then when I've done that, we'll come back and we'll start fitting various other bits and pieces like the brake gear, the 2 missing bearings, and everything else. So I'll do that, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so I've done this off camera, which is a little bit against my policies recently, but it was very awkward and extremely tedious, and it would have been tedious for you to watch it. It's taken me probably about 25 to 30 minutes to solder this up and make sure it's flat. Now, you saw both of the axle alignment rods fell out, which means that they should be good. And what I've done is I've cleaned it up. There's a couple of things that you do need to be aware. In the cutout of the fold up bit, the one that's got the holes for the bearings in, there's sort of like a cutout at the end. These parts that you put in, the spacers, they need to sit down so they're flat in the cutout, so then you get your good shape at the end. You won't get a gap. So what we'll do now, I'll just take, because it's like I said, it's a bit strange in that the chassis fits in, and then the 2 side frames that we made last time, they actually sit on top of the chassis, so you can't put the chassis in with the side frames there. So what we'll do is we'll remove the side frames just temporarily and see how what we've done of the chassis so far fits. Just make sure that there's no problems at the ends. Just undo the 4 bolts. So here's the chassis. That is the drawbar end, and that's obviously the outer end. And we'll just put this in, see how it goes. And well, that's the back end and that's the front end, so it's not too bad. This one needs a little bit of fettling in here. I've left a little bit of solder which is stopping it going down. Try to, when you solder it, solder on the outsides here. I'll clean that off in a moment and get a better fit. So this is what I've done. What we'll do now is we'll just fit the relevant steps, and they're relatively easy. Just fold them up prior. So this is a V step, and that goes on the loco end, cab end. It's not particularly difficult to do, just feed it through the hole, and then there's a tag on the back which needs bending down. And it should be self-supporting, and it is. We'll just do that. Some tweezers, because although I've lost the feeling in my left hand fingers, I still feel burn. Right hand still feels it. Make sure it's level. Yeah, I'm making a little bit of a pig's ear of this. Hold on. This should be very simple to do. Well, anyway, there's the first one done. So you've just got 4 of those to do, but make sure that you get the right steps in the right thing. It's quite obvious which ones are which because they're both different sizes. So it is quite straightforward. Just take your time, make sure that it's all square because it will be quite noticeable if it's not. The rear ones are quite fragile, so they can actually be soldered to the buffer beam. The other ones can't. And the last one. And what I'll do before we move on to the next stage, I'll go away and I'll do a little bit of cleaning up just to make sure that the chassis fits into the base of the body of the tender that we've made already, and then we'll come back and we'll carry on with fitting the brakes. Okay, so I've done some cleaning up on this and on this. So what you may find is that you will need to open out these slots. So there's one on either side at this end and two on that side on the other end, which is the buffer beam end, and I've removed all the solder, and now the chassis fits on, and there is a little bit of a gap, but you've got to remember that this is screwed up, and if you press it, there's the gap between the base of the tender and the buffer beam is negligible. And what you could do, or what you can do, is you can use this piece to cover the gap up. So we'll just offer it up and see, and well, yeah, that will hide that gap very, very nicely indeed. So we'll do that in a minute. We'll solder the Cosmetic buffer beam on in a minute, but the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to fit the middle oversized bearings, which are these two. If you remember, I said these give you a bit of float on the center axle, so basically your center axle has a bit of up and down and side to side play in it, so that gives you a sort of certain amount of compensation. I mean, it doesn't sort of eliminate or take the place of full compensation, but it's better than nothing, and a lot of DJH are like that. So you can see that that is very loose on the alignment jig. So we'll just fit these, same process as the other one. Gently use the taper reamer, although these two bearings, it's not all that critical because there's quite a bit of play in them. So that one a little bit more. That's it. And before we move on, there is another part that we're going to fit, which is in the same packet as the bearings. Right, so there's one oversized bearing. You need all 6 bearings in for this next bit, because we are going to need the wheels and we're going to fit the brakes. And to fit the brakes, we have got solder white metal. So we just check we have got a bit of white metal solder there. Again, make sure the bearings are fully seated. Not like I have just done, which is this one is sitting up. So we have four bearings. Yeah, sorry. So there we have the oversized bearings, 6 bearings, not 4. And the last bit to fit before we go on to the brakes is this part here, which is the drawbar post, and we can fit that. There's a hole under this end, and we'll just need to open that out slightly. Where's the instructions? What's it say on the instructions? Diameter 2.5. See what we've got. Yeah, I don't think that is 2.5. It's most certainly not 2.5. Let's see if we've got a 2.5mm drill. All the drills are down here, sorry. And we have a 2.5mm drill somewhere. I've just got to find it. That'll probably be in here. .5, finally found it. And well, 2.5 goes through the hole, but the part that is to have a 2.5mm, oh, it does fit. Right. Silly me. Oh. All falling apart now. Right, so we'll just solder this in place. And this is the post for your coupling between the locomotive and the I think we might have to resort to something a bit more powerful to do this. so there's your drawbar post, and there is, I don't have to trim the top off because there is a hole in the base plate to cater for the bit that protrudes. So we'll just offer that up again. Just make sure it all fits, and there you have it. So right, now we'll move on to the brakes. So the brakes are, there's two lots of white metal castings, and they don't, I've had a look at them, I had a look at them earlier before I started, and they look to be identical. I mean, I can't tell them apart. They look to be cast the same. They're in batches of 6, so there's 2 lots of 6, and well, like in later kits, they give you a picture in the instructions to show you what bits are what. These bits, they haven't got a picture, so you can't really tell what they are. So I'm afraid that we're going to have to wing it a bit, and hopefully these ones will be correct and there won't be any difference. But there we go, there are 6 of these, and they fit in these holes, 1, 2, 3. So we'll just check that they fit okay. Yeah, they fit okay. Castings will need cleaning up a bit. There's a little bit of flash on them where they've been cut off the sprue that they were cast on. So we'll do that, and we'll come back and we'll start getting the bits ready to fit the brakes. Right, so the next stage is to do the brakes. So what we've got our 6 brake shoes here, which I have cleaned up. These are the brake shoes. There we are. I've cleaned those up a little bit, and I'll clean them up a little bit more as we go along. Just remove any flash from. And I've already fitted 2 pairs of Slater's wheels, and I'll just go through, if you're not familiar with using Slater's wheels, or this is your first time for doing this. So we open up the packet, and normally on the back of Slater's wheels there is a casting pip from where the centre bit is cast. So it's actually here on the back. So what we'll do, we'll just run the wheel on a bit of abrasive, and that's cleaned it off a little bit. So we'll just use a scalpel to tidy up the spokes, and then do the same for the other one. That's all right. The axle, sometimes the squared bit of the axle has a burr on. Right, this one, it looks like, oh no, it's okay. Sometimes it has a bit of a burr on it, so you just need to dress it with a file. Just do it up. So there's the wheel chassis, and we'll just try it on. I've got a bit of track. This is a bit of C&L track. And you can see it doesn't rock. It's not sort of three-legged. All the wheels are in contact with the rail, and they're all going round, which is good, which is what you want. So enough playing. We'll go to put that to one side. So fit the wheels. You need the wheels in to fit them. Make sure that they're handed. Just do a trial fit first. Trial fit first. And you want to make sure that the flange isn't going to come in touch with the casting, otherwise you'll get an electrical short. So there is a little bit too much play in these wheels as they stand, but I've got some spacing washers somewhere. But we'll worry about that afterwards. You just need them in place to do the and really, to my mind, the holes for are not quite in the right place. Let's have a look with this. Well, the holes are in line with the brake pull rods, but it doesn't look right to me. But we'll go with it. We'll go with it. We'll go with DJH's holes rather than start drilling extra holes. So we're going to do white metal soldering now. So you need your white metal solder. I buy mine from Roxy Mouldings because I found that it's good. So the way to do this is to pick an end, basically. Pick an end of the chassis, either the rear or the front. We're going to do the front. We're going to start the front, and you need a length of 1mm wire as well. Just check that it goes through the holes in that part, and it does. So soldering irons back up to full temperature, and what we're going to do, because we're going to use indirect heat, we won't adjust the soldering iron. We're going to solder from the rear to a tiny bit of 140, tin it around the hole both sides, and then the one that you trial fitted, line it up so it looks sensible, just about looks sensible. Make sure it's not in contact with the tyre or the flange of the wheel, which it isn't, and then we'll solder it from the rear at full temperature. That's the first one. So find one that's the other hand. Dress the spigot, make sure that it fits in the hole. Try it in the hole. Look at it by eye. When you're happy, tin either side with 145. Make sure the flange isn't touching. Hold it in place. Line it up by eye with the one on the other side. Make sure it's square. Right. So we started at that end, so take your brake pull rod, so you should have two of these, and they go this way up and they go inside. We'll just check. go inside the chassis. So there we have that, but don't solder the pull rods yet. You can solder the cross beams to the brake shoes if you wish now, but don't solder the cross pieces yet because we need to line them up. And I've lost my brush. I've lost my flux brush. Where did it go? There it is. Right, so we'll just do the right, so if you're going to do this, you need to be pretty careful now, because the bit of the brake shoe which is near is thin. So let's give it a little bit of a white with 145 and then finish it off with this 70°. And don't linger too long, otherwise you'll melt the end of the eye bit of the eyelet of the brake shoe. And try to use indirect heat. Don't put the soldering iron. Don't put the soldering iron on the brake shoe itself. So we'll just trim that off. So leave a little bit. Okay, so that's the first one done. So we'll do another one and then I'll do the third one off camera. So pick a brake shoe, clean it, the spigot. That is going to go through. Except now you've got other bits that you can use to line up. You've got your brake pull rods that you can use to line up the wheels, so that isn't too bad. Right. Take the shoe off. Paint the hole with flux, tin 150, tiny bit on both sides. Except this time we're going to do it slightly differently. Because you have done the first one, we are going to fit the pull rod first, because you got something to put it through. So this time we're not going to take a risk, we're going to do it properly. So take your 1mm wire and tin the end. In the end with 70 as well. this time we are going to do the pull rod first. So that goes all the way through, that's good. And I've done it. That's all you need to do. It's quite simple. As long as you don't touch the white metal part, you shouldn't have any disasters. So now, because we've got the rod soldered to the brake shoe, we don't have to worry too much about lining it up, because the designers at DJH, with a bit of luck, have done this for you. So the brake pull rods give you your spacing. Make sure it goes through both. And a bit of flux again, and then make sure that that looks roughly perpendicular across, and it does. And now a bit of white metal solder. Yes, thank you. I don't need a wash. Sorry, Boris just came back up from downstairs, decided I need a wash. And then just do the one on the other side, and then this should all be lined up now. So thread that over. Offer it up. Yep, that looks good. Flux it 145 both sides. Sorry, not flux it, tin it 145 both sides. There's two done. Hold on, where's the thing gone? There it is. There's two done. I'll go and do the third one, and then I'll come back and we'll do a little bit more. Okay, so it's the autofocus. So it's done. That's what we've done. It appears that there are no parts in the kit for this bit, the handbrake and the linkage. We can leave that. We might at some stage do a bit of scratch building and have some linkage under there to represent going up into the main bit, but these are, from what I can see, the bits. And there are a couple more bits that we need to fit. These are the castings that go in these holes on the side frame, so we'll just look out for those. They are part number 43, so we'll see if we can find those. I've got a good idea what they look like. I know that they're white metal parts because I found them earlier and I put them up, put them away. They're not in there. This is the one with all the tender castings in. Right. Right, there's one in there. There should be another bag in here somewhere. And we'll just do these the same way that we've done the white metal brake shoes. So we'll if I can find my paintbrush again. We'll use this one. It's here somewhere. So the only other parts that we need to fit are the plunger pickups, so I'm going to have to take the wheels out to do that. But with that, all you do is you just follow the Slater's instructions. You only need 4 out of a packet of 6, and the hole to mount them is 4mm or 3.9 if you've got 3.9mm drill. Which I haven't got, so I'm going to drill them out 4mm. And that will be the size, and that's all I'm going to do. So thank you for watching, and see you again soon with more of building the DJH standard 2MT, and when we come back the next time, it will be detailing the tender. Thank you for watching.